Week 2 overview. Number 1, we're just going to start off with what a literature review is. It's a big term, but it really just means something simple. And then number 2, we're going to try to find good and credible sources. And number 3, we're just going to evaluate the credibility of the sources. And number 4, we're going to get started on building our question. So where are you in the program? So we've done week 1 and we're now on week 2, which is on the research questions and the literature review. And week 3 will be research design. Week 4 will be data and analysis. Week 5 will be the writing, communication, and week 6, don't forget, will be the virtual symposium. So what is a literature review? A literature review is a systematic survey of existing published research on your topic. It tells you what is already known, what is disputed, and what has not yet been studied. So number 1, we need to avoid duplication. When we're doing literature review, we need to know what has already been done so we don't repeat it. Making the mistake of repeating research, it can be detrimental. So it's something that we should avoid. And number 2, we need to ground our work. Connect your research to the existing body of knowledge in your field. The research can add to the general knowledge of that field. It should have a unique thing to the field that you're in. And then number 3, we need to identify the gap. We need to find what's missing, unresolved, or under-researched. That is where your work lives. Our research is like a missing piece that's going to fill in a gap in the industry. When our research does that, guys, it works wonders. So how does a literature review work? Number 1, we need to define the scope. So we just need to decide what's relevant to your question and narrow down your search terms. Number 2, we need to search for sources, use databases, use different search tools, and find credible and relevant research. And then number 3, we just need to read and evaluate. We need to assess each source for credibility, relevance, and methodology. And then number 4, we just have to take notes because we can't find crucial, important information and then just forget about it, right? We should record the things that we find, the conclusions, and the methods from each source. And then number 5, synthesize. Synthesize just means to create. So we just need to group the sources by their theme, by their agreements, the contradictions, the gaps, just creating a generalized and structured group of information. And then number 6, write the review. Just summarize the landscape knowledge and do not just list some. So where do we find the sources? Our primary area or spot to find sources, Google Scholar. It's a free search engine for academic papers across all fields. So Google Scholar could be one of the best places where we can see if other people have any academic papers on the research topic that you're doing. And then another great area for anybody doing medical research or life sciences, the perfect website is PubMed. So PubMed is a great website, great place where you can do biomedical research, and we can see if anybody's done research in that research topic already. And then we have another research website, which is JSTOR. So JSTOR is a website related to humanities, social sciences. So for anybody doing research in social sciences, the best spot to find where that research is on JSTOR. Another great website is Eureka, which is just an educational research database. So it's another database we can use. And then Semantic Scholar, it's an AI-powered search across many academic disciplines. So it's a great software to use to find different research and to search on different academic papers. And then Wikipedia. So everybody knows to never cite Wikipedia because every teacher says Wikipedia is unreliable. So it's for orientation only, but you can still use its references to find real sources. So what counts as credible source? What counts as a credible source? So peer-reviewed journal articles. These are articles that are peer-reviewed, can be found on different types of websites that we've mentioned. Published books from academic presses. So different academic presses actually publish books, and those are a form of accepted sources. Any reports from government agencies like CDC, NIH, Department of Education, even CRA, the IRS, different government agencies that have reports, and data from established research institutions. So all those websites with a .edu attached to them, those are very well established institutions, and conference papers from recognized academic conferences. Those are all the accepted sources. So we try our best to avoid Wikipedia, as I've said, news articles because of all the bias that could be in them, blog posts and personal websites, unverified online databases, and this is a big one, but AI generated text, including this program's tools. We should try to avoid these. Evaluating sources. 5 key questions. So the first key question in evaluating a source is, when was this published? Because we can find very well made papers or sources on our research, but they could be from 20, 30 years ago, and that completely throws all credibility out the window. And then relevance. Does this directly address your question? The source should be relevant to what we're doing. If you're doing a research paper on soccer, you shouldn't have a source with a research paper on basketball, for example, right? And then authority. Who wrote this and what are their credentials? For example, if you're doing a research paper on AI, right? Then I Show Speed shouldn't be the person writing your research paper sources, right? Should be somebody that has a little bit more credibility. And then accuracy. Is the information supported by evidence? And then purpose. Why was this written? Because research articles differ from opinion pieces, advertisements, and advocacy content. So what is an annotation? An annotation is a brief paragraph attached to a source citation. It summarizes the source and explains its relevance to your research. So the summary should simply include what the research is about and what the researchers and the study find. And then the evaluation. How credible is the source and what are its strengths and its limitations? And then again, relevance. How does the source connect to your specific research question? So this is a prime example of a well annotated source. So as you can see, the citation is from Twenge and Campbell from 2019, and the title is Media Use is Linked to Lower Psychological Well-Being. So a summary. The study examined the relationship between social media and smartphone use and psychological well-being across a nationally representative sample of 500,000 adolescents. Results showed that the higher use correlated with lower well-being, and the indicators included happiness, self-esteem, and life satisfaction. Then evaluation. Published in a peer-reviewed psychology journal. Large sample sizes increases reliability. Data are correlational, not experimental, so causation cannot be established. Authors note self-reported screen time may undercount actual usage. And then relevance. Directly relevant to my research question about social media and academic performance. Provides a methodological framework for measuring well-being variables and raises important limitations I should adjust in my own study. Synthesizing versus summarizing. So this is the key difference because most students summarize, but researchers synthesize. So summarizing in general is weaker than synthesizing because summarizing, it reports each source one at a time. And that's slow, it's lengthy, and it just makes your paper more complex for no reason. It doesn't connect ideas across sources, and it's adequate for annotated bibliographies, but not for the bulk of the research. So Synthesizing is strong because it connects themes across multiple sources. 3 studies agree on X while 2 dispute Y due to Z. You have to make connections with your sources and use your sources as a way to actually have nice connections, ideas, connotations, and things to your research. So it identifies agreements, contradictions, and gaps. And it's required for a real literature review. So if you want to have a strong research paper, don't just talk about what the authors found, that the author A found this or author B found this. Try to combine the different sources and try to yield a symphony of a research paper.
Okay, this is the end of the literature review section. So do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, guys, if you have any questions as I'm presenting, feel free to ask it in the chat or even just interrupt me with your microphone, and I'm ready to answer any questions. So I see we have one great question from Isabella. So she asked, so are articles from college sites credible? So that's a very good question. So so to start, I'm going to say, yeah, because college sites are educational like institutions, they can be credible sources, but it's always a good idea to double check the author's credentials and the site's reputation. So so we should also know different details like how long ago the article was made, because if it was made in 2010, it's something we shouldn't use. But if it was made in 2024, then yeah, it's an article that we can use. And because it's from a college site, which is an educational institution, then it makes it a very good source because of that. And we should also see who wrote it, right? We should see if the person who wrote the article is actually, if they're solid, if what they're saying is solid, if everything is lining up, then yeah. So you just have to make sure to double check the author's credentials and the site's reputation. So yeah, that was a very good question actually. So yeah, anyone else have any questions? Feel free to put it in the chat. So yeah, building your research question. So a research question does three things. It specifies the relationship or phenomenon being studied. It implies a method for finding the research, and it's narrow enough to be answered within your scope. So the perfect example of a question refinement. So a question like, does social media affect students? So it's too broad, and we already know that things like social media affecting students have been done many, many times. So a better question is, does social media affect grades? It's not the best question, but it's more specific, and it has a higher chance of our research having impact. So a strong question is there a correlation between daily Instagram use and GPA in ninth grade students? So this question targets a specific app, which is Instagram, targets GPA, and then it targets a specific population, ninth grade students. So this is a great research question that has high potential of having a large amount of impact. So example questions by research track. Life sciences. How does sleep deprivation affect immune response markers in adolescents? So this is a very strong question, and I think we can see the reasons why. Computer science and AI. How accurately can a decision tree classify student dropout risk from attendance data? So this question could be hard to understand, but because of how the specifics that it dives into, we can tell that it's a really good research question. Math and data. What statistical patterns exist in local air quality data across income levels? Psychology and neuroscience. Does test anxiety correlate with short-term memory performance in middle schoolers? And then social sciences. How does minimum wage policy variation correlate with youth unemployment across states? So guys, one thing about all these research questions, they're all specific. If your research can be about anything, but if it's specific and it hits, the three key ideas and it's specific, then your paper already has a very high chance of giving you credible impact and being a useful portfolio piece. And so the last research question is humanities. And it says, how do primary sources from 1940 to 1945 frame civilian perspectives on World War II differently than textbooks? So again, it's specific and it hits the three key ideas. So here are some common research question mistakes. too broad. How does technology affect people? How does daily smartphone use correlate with sleep quality in 7th graders? See, technology affecting people, it's such a general question, but it's too broad to have actual impact. But daily smartphone use, sleep quality, and 7th graders, it's three things, it's specific, and it has a high chance of having impact. And then yes and no questions. Does exercise help students? I mean, we all know if you do 100 push-ups a day, you'll become jacked pretty much, right? But how does weekly aerobic activity volume correlate with academic performance scores? Do you see how specific it's getting? Guys, this is the one thing. It's just specificity. So make sure your research question is specific. And then already answered. Does smoking cause cancer? I mean, we all know that it can cause cancer. But then, what variables predict early lung cancer diagnosis in non-smoking populations? Guys, do you see the difference here? It's specific, but it's tailored accurately and specifically to that question. And then not researchable. What is the meaning of life? That question is more like philosophical than answerable with research. So then you could do, what factors predict reported life satisfaction in late adolescence? You can, any question that isn't really researchable, you can always spin it in a way that you can use research to answer. And then we have value-based. Is social media bad? It's too broad, but also it could depend on the perspective. It could be bad for some people or good for some, you know? So a better question, what is the relationship between daily social media use and self-reported loneliness in teens? Again, I'm going to say it, is specificity. Just be specific in your research question, and you likely have, something that's very precious in your hands.
Okay, so that's the end of the research question section. So a research question is basically the first topic you will just start looking into. So first you will do a literature review to kind of get an overview of your subject or field, and then you'll kind of decide on a topic, and then you'll get more specific into the research question. So you guys have already kind of decided your track, and some of you guys have put a topic that you want to focus on. So the homework for this week will just be forming your research question, and hopefully this helps. But now we're gonna move on. Oh wait, does anyone have any questions? So I guess nobody has any questions right now, but later on when you privately meet with your mentors, you can just ask as many questions as you want.
So how to read an academic paper. Do not read from start to finish. Use this order. Abstract. Read first. It tells you what the paper is about. So most research papers will have an abstract section, and it's the section that we should read first because it tells us what the paper is about, tells us what the researcher found, and whether it's relevant to the question. So it saves a lot of time and effort. And then the introduction. The introduction provides a background and explains the gap this research fills. It confirms relevance and gives context. And then the methods. How did they collect the data and what approach did they use? Evaluate quality of evidence here. So when we're looking at a research paper, we should always check the methods because the research could be relevant and it could be a great research project, but if they collected all of their data through ChatGPT, it might not be the most credible or quality evidence, right? So then results and findings. What did they find? We should note specific numbers, patterns, and outcomes. And then discussion and conclusion. What do the authors say it means? What limitation do they acknowledge? And lastly, references. We should mine this list for additional sources because this is how researchers trace the evidence trail. So recognizing bias in sources. So guys, again, as we said earlier, the reason why we were avoiding news articles as credible sources is because of bias. But also, all sources carry potential bias. The researcher's job is to just identify it, account for it, and still use good sources with appropriate context. So funding bias. Research funded by industry may favor outcomes that benefit the funder. Always check who paid for the study. So if we're looking at a research paper that's saying Good Life Fitness is one of the best fitness places, but then we see who funded it and it's funded by Good Life Fitness, then I mean that's bias right there, you know? So it's not going to be the most credible research paper. And then confirmation bias. Researchers may unconsciously design studies that support existing beliefs. Look for diverse beliefs. So we should never rely on a single paper or a single story. We should try to get a full picture of what's going on. Publication bias. Studies with positive results are more likely to be published. No results often go unpublished, skewing literature. And then sample bias. If a study only surveyed college students, its findings may not apply to middle schoolers or other populations. So if we have a research paper, if you're doing a research about teenagers, then we're gonna avoid research that's talking about maybe infants, right? Because it's different populations. Citation basics. Citations tell your reader where you found information, and proper citation prevents plagiarism and builds credibility. So I think some of you have already been learning about this in school, and the first form of citing is APA, and the format is the author, the year, the title of the article, the journal name, the volume or the issue, and the pages. And then, so the perfect example is on the screen right there about more time on technology, less happiness. And then the MLA citation. So this format is the author's last name and then the first name, the title, the journal name, the volume number, the number, year, and pages. And then we have a perfect example on screen. So take note of these differences. And then live demonstration, literature review. So watch as we build a mini literature review in real time. So let's choose a topic. The effect of nature exposure on student stress levels. Okay, that's a pretty good topic. And then let's search it on Google Scholar. So we're gonna search terms like nature, stress, students, and we're gonna filter to the last 5 years, and we're gonna look for papers and articles that are peer-reviewed. And then 3, we're going to pick 3 relevant sources. So we're gonna scan abstracts to confirm relevance before reading fully. So we can just do a quick skim on the abstract of these papers to see if it's actually related to our topic. And then 4, we're going to note key findings. So what did each study find and what methods did they use? You know, some studies might find things more important than others, and some methods might be more credible than others. And then number 5, identify the gap. Most studies used college students. Middle schoolers are understudied. So as soon as we find the gap, that is the perfect a gap in knowledge and research, it's like gold, because now your research is going to fill in that gap and it's going to provide, something that's good and credible for others. And then we have to draft the research question. How does weekly outdoor exposure correlate with reported stress in sixth graders? And then week 2, deliverables. So the very first deliverable is to draft the research question. The research question should be specific, researchable, original, and it should be a question, not a topic or a statement. Again, it should be, related to the chosen track, and it's draft only. So we're going to be refining it in week 3 with our mentors. And then deliverable 2, annotated source list. So each source that we find on the internet should be peer-reviewed, or at least from a credible institutional publisher. And each annotation, citation, plus 3-sentence summary, plus relevance to your question. So make sure our annotations have those 3 things. And then we need at least 2 sources that come from academic databases, not a general web search. Because academic databases, they're credible and it's perfect for actual research. And then we just need to submit it in the provided template document before the next session.